The Broken Bridge, a deep Zen teaching on adaptability. Master Kaito and his disciple Ren walked in silence along the path that bordered the river. The air smelled of damp earth, and the murmur of the water surrounded each step with its constant song. Ren, still young in his learning, admired the serenity of his master, who advanced without haste, as if time itself bent to his pace. They reached an old, cracked wooden bridge, its planks creaking with the breeze, and some ropes hung frayed. Ren stopped and frowned. "Master, this bridge is in bad condition," he said, with a hint of concern in his voice. Kaito calmly observed the structure, showing no signs of worry. He stepped forward, placing his foot with the same confidence as he would on solid ground. Ren swallowed and, after a moment of doubt, followed his master onto the bridge. But his mind filled with questions. What if the bridge breaks? He asked, unable to contain his unease. The master smiled slightly, with the patience of one who has seen many waters flow under many bridges. "Then we cross through the water," he replied naturally. Ren looked at him, unsure if this was a joke or a teaching. Ren furrowed his brow, reflecting on his master's words. He looked down and saw the river flowing smoothly, as if in no hurry to reach any destination. "But, Master," Ren insisted, trying to find certainty amidst his anxiety, "if the bridge collapses, the current will drag us away." Kaito continued forward without stopping. His steps were light but firm, as if the bridge were still in its best condition. "The water flows, but does not fight against the stone," he said calmly. "If we fall, we become the water." Ren shuddered at these words. He didn't fully understand what his master meant, but there was something in his voice that dispelled the fear. He took another step, feeling the wood creak beneath his feet. There was still some distance left to cross. The disciple proceeded cautiously, each creak of the bridge resonating in his chest like a drum of warning. But his master kept moving forward, as though the broken planks didn't exist, as if the gap between them were merely part of the path. Ren stopped again and looked at the river. The current was stronger than he had thought. "Master, if we fall, shouldn't we fight the current?" he asked, still feeling the fear gripping his mind. Kaito turned slightly, his eyes reflecting the calm of a windless lake. "Why fight?" he said. "The water knows where it's going. If we resist, we tire ourselves. If we surrender, we float." Ren lowered his gaze. He wasn't sure he could trust something as uncertain as the current of a river. Then, a plank beneath his foot cracked louder. The plank broke with a sharp sound. In an instant, Ren lost his balance and felt his body swallowed by the void. The air struck his face before he submerged into the cold water. The river embraced him in its liquid arms. His instinct was to fight, flailing his arms, resisting the current. But the more he struggled, the more the water dragged him. Then he remembered his master's words. "If we resist, we tire ourselves. If we surrender, we float." Ren stopped fighting. He released the tension in his body and allowed the water to carry him. In doing so, he felt his breath calm, and his body gradually rise to the surface. When he looked up, he saw Kaito standing on the shore, watching him with a slight smile. "There you are," the master said serenely. "Now the river carries you, but it does not drown you." Ren, still surprised by the feeling of lightness in his body, nodded silently. Ren floated for a few moments, letting the water guide him. For the first time, instead of fearing the current, he felt its rhythm, its constant pulse. It wasn't dragging him to disaster. It was simply moving him, like the wind moves the leaves in autumn. With gentle movements, he oriented his body toward the shore and, without haste, swam with the current rather than against it. When his feet touched the shallow bottom, He stood and walked out of the river, soaked but calm. Kaito was waiting for him in his dry robe, with the same serene look as always. "You've crossed the bridge," the master said. Ren blinked, confused. "But I fell into the water." Kaito nodded. "And didn't you reach the other side?" Ren opened his mouth to reply, but no words came. Throughout the journey, he had been worried about crossing the bridge without falling, without realizing that the purpose was not the bridge itself, but reaching the other side. He fell silent, watching the water continue flowing downstream. Ren sat on the shore, feeling the weight of the teaching inside him. He had feared the fall, had fought against the idea of failing, but now he understood that the true resistance had been in his mind, not in the water. Kaito sat beside him and looked at the river. "Life is like this bridge," he said with a calm voice. "We think we must cross it in one way, but when it breaks, we cling to fear instead of flowing with change." Ren nodded slowly. His clothes were still dripping, but he no longer felt the cold. "I always thought I should avoid the fall," he murmured, "but now I see that the fall was part of the path too." The master smiled. "If you understand that, you have learned to walk even in the water." Ren looked at the river with new eyes. The water had not been his enemy. It was a different bridge, a silent teaching that had always been there, waiting to be heard. The sun began to set on the horizon, casting golden hues over the river. Ren looked at his reflection in the water and felt that something inside him had changed. "Master," he said after a while, "if the bridge had never been broken, would I have learned this lesson?" Kaito let out a slight laugh. "Bridges, like life, wear down with time. Some days you'll cross with ease, other days you'll fall. But every experience teaches you something, if you're willing to listen." Ren let the words sink into his mind, like stones gently falling to the bottom of the river. "So there is no one right way?" he asked. Kaito shook his head. "There are only paths, and the one you take in this moment is the right one, because it's the one that teaches you." Ren took a deep breath. The fear he had felt when seeing the broken bridge no longer existed. In its place was a deep peace, like the water flowing without resistance. Ren stood up and looked at the river once more. Before, he had seen it as an obstacle. Now he saw it as part of the path. "Master," he said with a faint smile, "if we find another broken bridge, will we also cross through the water?" Kaito looked at him with his wise and calm gaze. "If the bridge holds our steps, we will cross it. If not, we will walk through the water. And if the water is too deep, we will wait for the wind to show us another path." Ren nodded. He no longer needed more answers. He now understood that life isn't about clinging to a single path, but about flowing with each moment, without fear of changing direction. They resumed their journey, walking alongside the river, leaving the old bridge behind without looking back. And the water, unchanging, continued its course.